Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Reviewing Comics with me, your host, Alexander Turbin. Today we're going to be going over Strangers in Paradise, number 6. It's a comic book from 1996 by Terry Moore. But before we get into that, I'd like to show you some of my own work. This is The Death Knights. It's a number 1 for $2.99. You can get this at alexanderturbin.com. It's a reprint of Random Access number 6 and number 9. But that doesn't end there. You can either get this by itself for $2.99, or you can get this and one of these cool lances, which looks more like this than this is the virgin copy where I'll do all kinds of sanding and cutting and painting and all that stuff. And you could get that for $5, or you can get this cool looking action figure. Well, it's not an action figure; it's just a figure. But you can get this for $35, and you get the lance and the comic book unpainted. You'll get that unpainted for $35, or you can get the painted version for $50, which you get the figure and the comic and the lance for $50, all painted and shiny and stuff. You can see it's pretty glossy. And you can get that at alexanderturbin.com. You can also go to my Patreon and support me there, which helps support the channel and helps support my comic books and all that kind of cool stuff. You get a monthly comic book if you go to random access /alexanderturbin.com. $3 gets you a comic book every month. And sometimes I'm late, but I get them out every month. There's 27 issues, or I'm working on 27, getting 27 out anyway to you guys. So let's get into Strangers in Paradise. So I just read this. I did read this back in the day. It is a book that I always wanted to really delve into. You can see the 4 Eisner nominations and 2 Harvey nominations. It did eventually win Eisner's and all these other awards, which it rightfully should have, because it is not only is a beautiful comic book, but it's also a very well written comic book. So it's by Terry Moore, and he does everything in the book. He writes it and illustrates it, publishes it. He did go from Abstract Studios, which is where it was first published in 1994, to, I don't know, this says July 1995. So I guess it's 95, not 96. But then they went to Homage Studios with Jim Lee. I think that's Jim Lee stuff. No. Isn't that Wildstorm? I don't know what Homage is. I think Homage is a bunch of books under the Wildstorm header, but I don't know that for sure. Terry Moore is the writer, creator, and everything. And this is not, here's the thing, this is not a superhero comic. It's not an action comic. It's not a sci-fi fantasy comic. It's just a comic book about I was reading a Google about it, and it was saying that it's about a romance, like a 3-way romance, or a I don't know what you call it, a triangle, love triangle between 2 women and a man. And really, since I'm jumping in at number 6, there's a lot that I don't know, and a lot that I'm missing. It starts out with, because I am going to read the story, get into the story, and then I'll jump back into the writing, into the art and stuff. But anyway, it starts off. It's obviously some rich lady's apartment complex, condominium, something like that, and she is getting this information from her stooge, a la Kingpin / what was his stooge's name? I can't remember. I'll have to look that up now that it's in my brain. But remember the part where Kingpin is getting all of this information about Daredevil and how he was going crazy and all this stuff. And he says how jealous he is that the stooge got to witness it firsthand. Anyway, now that I want to talk about that. But anyway, this is similar where there's a girl that this rich woman is looking for. I don't know why. I really wish that there was an introduction in the beginning that told a little bit about what had happened in the previous issues, because especially, Marvel Comics has had this thing where it could be every issue could be a number one for somebody, and that is so true, especially in indie comics, because there could be a 3 or a 4 or whatever where or even a 2 where the reader just doesn't know what's going on, and they may never even see number 1 or before that, which is not how it went for Strangers in Paradise and Terry Moore, because this became very famous and well known, and I can find more issues of those pretty readily. I'd have to pay quite a bit for the originals, and I'm looking for a trade paperback, but I don't know if I'm ever going to find one, because this is something that I definitely do want to find more of. They're, like I said, they're discussing this woman who she's in Hawaii. She's been in Hawaii, I guess, the one that they're looking for and discussing. And she's stowed away on something. She bribed somebody to get off of the Hawaiian Islands, and she's back in the States somewhere, and they don't know where yet. And this rich witch is saying, go after her, find her. Doesn't matter what it takes. And then it kind of zips to this. If you know how in TV or movies you see a dream sequence and you just automatically, first thing you do is it's a dream sequence. They often, almost always, try to trick you into not knowing what it is, and they're like, hey, what's going on here? I have no idea. And then at the end of the scene it's like, oh, it's a dream sequence. This was very, very very well known to me to be a dream sequence before I even had to look at it. It's little kids. I'm assuming it's the love triangle of I don't even know the characters' names. There's Kachu, or there's one David who's the male, and then there's what are their names? I can't remember their names. But they'll say it later on. And anyway, one of them is picking on David and calling him stupid, and the other one is defending him, and they're just having this little thing about how she's calling him stupid and making fun of him, and then David gets his feelings hurt and he walks off, and the other one gets really pissed off that the other one is made him cry and hurt his feelings, and he says, I like David, I like him a lot, I love David. And then it's really revealed that it was actually the dream sequence. So, K, it's K. I can't remember the 3 main characters, because there's 3 main characters in here that really is Kachu. Kachu is the blonde, and I can't remember the name of the dark-haired one. But she wakes up, and she realizes that she loves David. It was, I think there was some sort of like, Kachu is a lesbian maybe, or she has no interest in David, but David loves her. So now this character, whoever that is, Francine, I think it's Francine and Kachu, I'm not sure. But Francine realizes that she loves David, so it really is a super love triangle, and it gets really messy, because as anybody knows with relationships, they often get messy. So she wakes up, and there's a letter from Kachu talking about the cake, and don't eat the cake for breakfast, and meet us later on for lunch, or something like that. The scene switches to a mall, it's a very seamless transition from the note to the mall, and they're just kind of looking around. And remember the heyday of malls, when you would go into a mall and it would just be like mass amounts of people, and you could smell the food court in the background, and there's just maybe music, and there's just all this stuff going on. You go to a mall now, and there's maybe 4 or 5 stores open, and the rest are closed, and it's really kind of sad and pathetic and depressing, and that would be a good backdrop for a comic book. There's a South Park episode where they go to the mall and it's inhabited by zombies, it really feels like some sort of zombie place that you go to. They have this little dialogue. It's David really showing his intentions to Kachu, and she knows it. She knows that he's in love with her, and she kind of just plays with him. Like they're talking about where they've been and stuff, and Kachu says Hawaii, and he says, "Well, maybe you could go back," and she says, "Who with who?" And he says, "With me," and she kind of makes fun of him. In the dream sequence, she calls him stupid and a dummy and all this stuff, and that gets Francine all pissed off and worked up. And it's really funny how it parallels, the dream sequence parallels what's going on here, because she is kind of calling him stupid because he has this love for her, and that's idiotic to her, and she really downplays it and downplays him, and really doesn't appreciate him, I guess, for who he is. I'm guessing that as soon as Francine declares her love for David, that eventually Kachu will be like, "Oh, wait a minute, I love him too." So then there's going to be a big cat fight. So I have no idea if that's really what happens, but that's just my thoughts about what could happen. So Francine, I think it's Francine again. Miss Chuvansky, that's Kachu, but I guess it doesn't say her name. She opens the door. There's police officers looking for Kachu, and there was a note, remember, before, saying that they were going to be at the mall and to meet them later on. But they barge in. They've got a warrant. Apparently, she's assaulted police officer. So there's been all kinds of backstory with Kachu that we just don't know about, where that's why she's being pursued by this rich woman who's after her. And so Francine doesn't know anything about this. She's getting all worked up and sad and frightened and all that stuff. And she's trying to delay the police as long as she can and not telling them anything. And the police are looking around for any kind of clues or hints or whatever, and they just don't find any. And then it zips back to the rich woman. She's in a board meeting, as they always are, and they're talking about the ups and downs of their company and the price increases and all this stuff, blah blah blah. And then her stooge walks in, and he tells her that the police have her in their sights, and they're going to arrest her. And the rich lady's like, "No, that can't happen. She's worth a lot of money." So we don't know why she's worth a lot of money, but she is. And so they tell the stooge to get her apprehend her. The police eventually leave, and Francine, I think it's Francine, calls them all or wherever she thinks they're going to be, looking for Kachu and David to warn them and stuff. Kachu and David are in the mall, like I said, looking at clothing and stuff like that. And when Kachu recognizes somebody in her past who is pursuing her, she's like, "I'm going to try these clothes on." She goes into the changing stall. She knows that she's going to have to run, and that but she can't let it on. And David's like, I'll wait for you in the food court with some pizza and some a Coke and chips. And she's like, "Okay, that's fine." It's this little word balloon here where it just kind of falls off, where you're like, "Oh my God, she's gonna just ditch him," and he loves her, and she's gonna ditch him. So she's all worked up. She's afraid of this girl who is like a ninja, apparently. So they've had some sort of past where must have been some kind of violence. She's looking in the changing stalls for her, and she thinks she can find her. She smashes open the door, and she's gone. Of course, obviously. Where did she go? We don't know. Next issue. I'm gonna find some more of these. I'm gonna find 1 through 5, and I'm gonna definitely read them. And because the writing, as I said, I go through the story and then go through the writing and then go through the art. I so often talk about how each character has to have their own personality, their own way of talking, their own feel, and each one of these characters so does. The plot, there's not a lot of plot. It's obviously a very character-driven book, very character-driven story, and this reminds me so much of Neil Gaiman and Sandman. It's a little bit thicker and beefier as far as because this is a singular vision and it's not a writer and artist and working in tandem, and where you have to decipher what the writer is trying to say to the artist and to the reader. This guy, Terry Moore, can just throw it all out there and do exactly what he wants. And so the writing is a little bit more personal. It's a little bit more personal. It's a little bit more in depth, but it's also the everything's thicker. The word balloons are thicker. The dialogue is thicker. What do I mean by thicker? In terms of dialogue, I guess I just mean that it's more of a less story but more compact. It's more about, like I said, their relationships and who they are and stuff like that. And it's not so much about moving the story along. It's not about getting from A to B. It's more about how you get from A to B. Also, one of the things is being a writer artist, you can do things. You can do this kind of thing where she drops her keys, she opens the door, she's exasperated. Yes, you can write that down. Yes, you can translate it for an artist, but there's something, I don't know, there's something magical, something different about a writer artist doing the same thing. It's just a little bit more personal. And frankly, I like, it's so hard to say because some of my favorite comic books are writer artist teams, but then some of my favorite comic books are just the writer artist being the same person. Like Walter Simonson, my favorite stuff of his is Thor, and that's his writer artist in him. But you have people like Jack Kirby, where his best stuff was with Stan Lee, supposedly. I don't know. I don't know. Do a lot of people like his DC stuff? I'm going to ignore that. I'm going to ignore that part because that's a whole new can of worms. That's a whole nother can of worms. The Jack Kirby, Stan Lee dichotomy or story or whatever. But so many, like Frank Miller, so much of his stuff that he writes and draws on his own, even if he has an inker or whatever, is so fantastic. But then you look at the Born Again stuff and the Year One Batman, and it's just fantastic too. So it's saying that one is better than the other is perilous at least, and I just don't think you can say it, even though I just kind of did. There's just something about it, something nebulous about it. If you guys have any kind of thoughts on the issue of writer artists versus writers and collaborators, please let me know, because that is a huge huge topic, and it's definitely something that I really want to get into. So the writing is fantastic, mostly because of the dialogue. The dialogue is great. Every character has their own voice. It runs smoothly. It reads smoothly. This, even though there's a lot of reading, a lot of writing, a lot of dialogue, a lot of stuff, it took very little effort to read, and it reads very well and very quickly. It's a little bit like a Harry Potter novel. The Harry Potter books, you can read those in like a day and a half, something like that. Also, another thing is it's all dialogue. None of this is like interest, like I don't know, what do you call the non-dialogue, the text, just the text of the book. It's all dialogue, so it reads very fluidly and very fluently. It's very easy to get into and out of. The art it's so hard to say that the art is what shines in the book because the writing is so good, but the art is really fantastic. It reminds me of Adam Hughes. Certainly reminds me so much of Adam Hughes, but Adam Hughes has this beautifulness that Terry Moore doesn't. he's got the little part underneath the jaw that shows that these women are not perfect. These people are not perfect. They've got a little bit of weight to them. They're a little girthy. They're not supermodels. They're not models. They're regular human beings, and that is one of the really fantastic things about this is the regularness of it. It's kind of like how I was talking about Will Eisner and how he has that great ability of yes, his characters can be very cartoony, and this is pretty cartoony as well. It's not like it's a photographic kind of art. It's definitely cartoony, but it's a little bit less cartoony than Will Eisner. And Eisner had that ability too, where he would show fat people and short people and thick people, and also just the way they interact. So many great artists say that they have the most difficult time just having people stand around. Like John Byrne, one of his great quotes that I remember was that doing the action sequences was really pretty easy for him, but having the X-Men all sit around the house playing cards or whatever, that was really the difficult part. And that's what Terry Moore really shines at. He shines at he doesn't have these big extravagant fight scenes or anything like that. There's no major foreshortening or three-dimensionality of his work. Yes, everything does have a movement and a three-dimensionality of it, but it's not like right out there. It's every panel is not a splash page. Every panel works on each other and moves the story, and that's one of the great things about the book and Terry Moore is that his narrative art, I did not have to go back and reread anything, and I don't think I ever would in any of his books. I knew exactly what was going on, and everything moved fluidly. Even if you have something that's not technically correct, like this may have been better served if it had been flipped and she was headed this way because you're looking at as her. This may have been better served to be looking that way, where your eye is going right and then down, and then again, this would have been served a little better served flipped. Her looking this way, her looking down, her moving this way, her looking this way towards the next page. That probably would have been a little bit better, but it's still read beautifully, and I had no problems with it. It didn't slow me down. I didn't get lost. It's just something about the mechanics that, maybe would have been better, but who am I to say what Terry Moore should do because he is a brilliant cartoonist. There's no doubt about it. It's a little bit like he is a Hernandez brother, only he adds all of this extra dimensionality to it. Like their characters are very animated, but even a little bit more cartoony. He's kind of like in between. But everything is so beautiful in all of their faces, their expressions, their movements, their poses, their hair. He does really fantastic and beautiful hair. Just everything about them is so flowing and realistic in a cartoony kind of way, which is really kind of what I aspire to as well. Reminds me of early Bacalo. Chris Bacalo. He did Shade the Changing Man, which I'm going to review at some point. But he is very similar. His art style is very similar. His is a little bit more scratchy, but lots of movement in the same way. But his style changed a little bit when he went to the X-Men, where it became a little bit more exaggerated and had that foreshortening and all that kind of stuff going on that he didn't have in Shade the Changing Man, because Shade was much like this, a book about personal issues and emotions and feelings and stuff like that, instead of the superhero kind of thing that's going on. So anyway, I love it. It's beautiful work. I'm going to pick up more, and I really wholeheartedly recommend it. If you are into only superheroes, if you're, which I think that if you think of comic books in only superhero means and ways, that I really feel like you're kind of missing the boat on the comic book medium. If you're an artist and you only want to draw superheroes, if you're a comic book reader and you only want to read superheroes, you're really kind of missing stuff, because one of the greatest comics obviously is Mouse, by I can't remember his name, but that's a Pulitzer Prize winning comic book, and that has nothing to do obviously with superheroes. It's a book about the Holocaust and stuff like that. And so just to say to yourself, I'm not going to look at something because it doesn't have superheroes, it doesn't have fantasy, it doesn't have sci-fi, you're really kind of missing the boat, because so much of why you like superheroes, why you like fantasy, why you like sci-fi is not because it is all of those. It's because it's done well. It's the personal relationships, it's the drama and stuff like that. It's not just that they're in spandex or shoot lasers or whatever. It's that they have great emotional connection to you or each other, and you can see that. And that's what this is, only it's not any of that other extravagant or extra stuff going on. It's just personal relationships and romance and stuff like that. So I wholeheartedly recommend this. It's a wonderful book. I love it. And even if you don't like this kind of stuff, I would recommend you give it a try, because the artwork is beautiful, especially if you do like an Adam Hughes or something like that, because it is very similar to that in style. Yeah, so that's what I have to say about Strangers in Paradise. It's a beautiful book, and I'm going to get some more. I'm going to give this a I haven't read enough issues to give it a 10. I'm going to give this a 9. Simply because I don't have any other issues to compare it to like delve into the characters. I don't know the characters enough. I don't know the story and all of that stuff. So I'm going to give this a 9, which is really fantastic. It's beautiful art. It's great writing, and I can't wait to get some more. But yeah, it's definitely a 9, and it was restarted as a Kickstarter in 2024. I don't know if it's retelling of anything or it's just new stories or whatever, but it's a fantastic book. So if you're a new watcher, or if you just stumbled upon the channel, please consider subscribing and giving me a thumbs up and notification bell and all that cool stuff. I usually delve into 80s and 90s indie comics. I'm an artist, as you know, as from the beginning. But more than all of that, notification, all that stuff, I really love to hear your guys' thoughts about the books, and especially any Strangers in Paradise fans out there. Let me know the continuity in which I should try to find things. Should I go for, there's a second volume or something, second series? Will I be okay just getting the second series and not getting the first series if it's a little pricey? Or should I try to delve back into a first series kind of thing and work on from there? But let me know if you like the art. I think it's beautiful, but let me know what you guys think, because I always love hearing about your comments and discussing comic books. I love talking about comic books. So let me know. And thanks again for watching, and I will see you guys in another couple days. And till then, keep on creating.